We are here in an incredibly beautiful rose garden. Now, most of these roses, actually all of these roses, I believe, are cultivated roses, meaning humans have been working with hybridizing to accentuate the color, the presentation of the flower. But my favorite thing to talk about is more of the energetics of roses. My favorite part about rose, as much as the beauty and the scent are really amazing, my favorite part about talking about rose is the juxtaposition between this beautiful flower that represents femininity and the thorns that will make you bleed if you treat it with disrespect. I love that. I love the softness, the gentleness. The petals are like silk. They're so beautiful. But if you just ran up to a rose and you're like, oh my gosh, you're so beautiful, I want to smell you and hug you, there's a good chance, if you're not really aware, that you're going to be grabbed by one of those rose thorns, and it's going to pull. Oftentimes they're like little cat claw shape, and so if it gets in you, unless you pull in the right direction, it's going to pull a little piece of you with it. And I really can appreciate that. Just because something is soft and gentle doesn't mean that it's not going to hurt you if you don't treat it with respect. And I can really appreciate the quality of recognizing that most things in life are multifaceted. Most things are not just one way. And when we can accept plants, people, ecosystems, nature, that we are incredibly multifaceted. We all are incredibly multifaceted. And roses are no different. Roses have the darker the color, the more antioxidants they have in their petals. Rose petal syrup, rose hip syrup, these are absolutely steeped in human history. Many cultures around the world have so much reverence for roses, and the syrup has been used as a way of bringing sweetness into the life. Even when there are no fruits available, we can make rose hip syrup. Rose hips are incredibly rich in antioxidants and vitamin C. The oil inside the rose hip seeds is incredibly nutrient dense and really healthy for the skin. The darker the color of the rose petal, the more antioxidants, and those antioxidants have actually been found to benefit the heart muscle, the cardiovascular system. So this isn't just energetically good for the heart, of which it is also is physically good for building up vitality, building up structure and strength in the heart. And then we can also relate that to energetically. Roses are used for people who are going through grieving time, people who are dealing with heartache. So really fantastic. When I think about rose, both the qualities of the flowers and those antioxidants, but also the energetics of rose. I think about people who tend to have a weepy heart, people who are overly empathetic and have a hard time knowing about all of the travesties in the world because they wear their heart on their sleeve. Rose energetics give us gumption, give us strength to be able to move through life and maintain that softness and be able to have an open heart, but also have the structure to be able to protect our hearts, to be able to help people, but not lose ourselves in that process, not taking on other people's and other things in general, not taking on the stress, but being able to be a structure of strength and being able to offer some protection, offer some vitality, or just offer a hug. Even though we want to be careful about hugging our roses, we can have both that softness, but also that structure, and be able to protect ourselves with some thorns if we really need to. I also really appreciate that when thinking about grief, and rose is very commonly associated with grieving, I really love that idea that grieving is hard. You know, the feeling of suffering when we lose a loved one is really hard. It's also an absolute guarantee about being alive. There is no way to be alive and not actually deal with the loss of people that you love, animals that you love, plants that you love. There is suffering is part of life. But we have allies in that suffering. And when I think about rose and helping with that grief, sometimes we need to recognize that the only way to move through grief is to do exactly that, is to be present with it. I remember one of the first times I was really grieving the loss of something, and I was talking to someone who's very knowledgeable, and I said, how can I get through this grief? And they said, okay, what you need to do to get through this grief is you need to wrap the grief around you like a blanket, and you need to sit with it. And I was like, that is not what I want to hear. But they were absolutely right. There are some times where the only way to deal with the pain is to just be present with it, because sometimes life is painful. But knowing that it's not always painful. And even when you're going through the pain, there is softness, there is beauty, there is joy. And the more we can have gratitude for having access to joy and softness and happiness, that helps us be able to move through grief. A few years ago, I went through my hardest grieving time that I've experienced thus far after losing a friend, a very dear friend. And the grief was way more intense than anything I'd ever experienced. And what I found was, when I really sank into that grief, the reason you experience grief is because you have that deep of well in your heart from where you felt the love. So when you can, when you can really sit with that grief and know that grief is just another form of love, and that's like sitting with the rose even after it's pricked you and you're bleeding a little bit, but that there's still the softness of the petal, and there's still the representation of love that roses are really well known for. So for the longest time, I wasn't really into rose medicine until I was. Plants tend to present themselves at the right time and place when you really need them. And when I was grieving my friend, I saw roses everywhere. And that little adage of we should all stop and smell the roses, which takes a long time when you're in a rose garden, by the way, it is so incredibly, vitally important, because the scent of a rose, the beauty of a rose, reminds us to be gentle with ourselves and reminds us of the beauty of life and the beauty of love, even the beauty of love lost. It's still that you got to experience the love. And that's what grief reminds me of, and that's what roses remind me of. So I hope you have the opportunity to go out and smell a rose sometime soon.